What's up, guys? I'm Laura from Reading in Bed, and today I'm doing the mid-year book freakout tag. Now, I'm not sure if I'm meant to be freaking out because the year's half over and I haven't read enough books and I need to read more books, or if I'm meant to be freaking out about the specific books that I've read. Either way, I don't think I'm going to do either because I've just read my 44th book of the year, and if I stay on this pace and read 88, that's the most books I've ever read in a year, so I'm not freaking out about that. And if I don't count rereads, then I haven't had a 5-star read since like March, so I'm not doing a lot of freaking out about specific books lately either. Let's just get into it. Maybe there'll be a freak out. So question number 1 is the best book you've read this year. It's Here I Am by Jonathan Safran Foer, or Jonathan Safran Foer if you prefer. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to get much into the book in this video, but it is, I would say, even by far the best book I've read. Again, discounting some rereads and stuff that I've read this year, and becoming a favorite author, and it was just great. Number 2 is the best sequel that you've read this year. I haven't read any, and I started some series, including this one, The Talented Mr. Ripley, but then, as I always do when I think, oh, I should read the next book in this series, I look up some reviews and see everyone talking about how it's not as good, and it's never as good as the first book, so then I just lose all motivation to do so. A new release that you want to read this year, The Idiot by Elif Batuman came to mind. I've heard her do a couple of interviews on various podcasts. It sounds pretty interesting. It also seems to do with sort of the early internet, which is kind of an interest of mine. Number 4 is most anticipated book that's coming out in the second half of the year. I got nothing. I looked at the Publishers Weekly article about the big books coming out in the second half of this year, and like really nothing grabbed me. So I don't know. Number 5 is the biggest disappointment. And I've got 2, and even though I liked reading both of these and I've even recommended them to people, they just didn't quite hit the spot. One is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Yeah, the writing wasn't that good. Like, the story was interesting and there were a lot of things I liked about it. I enjoyed reading it, but even I didn't even have to go back and look. Like, as I was reading, I was just like, yeah, some of these sentences are just, and then secondly was The Last Neanderthal by Claire Cameron, which is totally down to my own crazy expectations, and I knew that going in because her previous novel, The Bear, is one of my lifetime like top 5 desert island kind of books. So I knew it wasn't going to live up to the hype that I was creating in my own head, so that's my own problem. You should still read it. Number 6 is the biggest surprise this year, and that has definitely been Memoirs of a Polar Bear by Yoko Tawada, because I picked this up just totally on a whim because of the cover. I think I read one review, but I had no idea what I was getting into. This is such a weird book. This is not really a book that you're going to be like, oh yeah, I would compare this to, because there's nothing to compare it to. It's literally 3 polar bears telling their memoirs in their own words. And like, it even gets weirder than that. Like, I don't think that's the weirdest thing about this book. And it's so good. Like, the writing is so good. The ideas are so out there and creative. Plus, I think this struck a chord with me because I've been doing a lot of work at my local zoo this year. And this has a lot to do with, circuses and zoos and animal rights and captivity, and what does it mean to be captive versus free for people and for polar bears. So, yeah. Number 7 is favorite new, debut author. So that's going to be Danielle Dutton. I think this is her first book, Margaret the First. This was such a light and airy and breezy read, but I don't mean that it didn't have substance, because it did. It's just, one of those books where it feels totally effortless, but there's a lot going on and it's going to give you stuff to think about afterwards. And that's true. I'm still thinking about this book weeks later. Number 8 is Fictional Crush. I'm going to go with Jonathan Safran Foer. I know he's a real person, but seeing as I'm a married lady in Edmonton and he is dating Jen from Dawson's Creek, he might as well be fictional. Number 9 is favorite character. So, Our Woman from Malarkey by Anna Kena Schofield. You might recall that I did a podcast a couple months ago now where me and other, book bloggers, booktubers, podcasters, etc. debate it, who the best female character in Canadian literature is. And my pick was Our Woman. So even though I'd already read the book a couple times, I felt like I knew her. Going through that process of preparing and arguing and, talking about her, now I feel like I really know her. And I love her. She's so funny, so flawed, so out there. I really can't recommend this book enough. This is one of my all-time favorites too. Let's see, number 10, a book that made you cry. Here I am again. The last 100 pages, I would say I was crying. I can cry pretty discreetly. So, and then at the end there was like a big ugly cry, and it just so cathartic, so good. Number 11 is a book that made you happy. I don't really want books to make me happy. However, I'm going to mention 2 historical fiction type books because those tend to be comfort reads to me, and I think that's what this is getting at. So one is The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. Not my favorite of hers, but that's not saying much because I really, really love her. The Wonder was good. It was very good, I would say. Just wasn't quite up there with Slammerkin, which is my favorite all-time Emma Donoghue book. But definitely well worth reading. And the second one is called She Rises, and I forgot to write down the author, but it was an 18th century England kind of nautical lesbian love story, sort of in the style of Sarah Waters. And again, like not quite as good as Sarah Waters, but still really good. And I'm really glad that I read it. Let's see, number 12, best book to movie adaptation. So there's a movie that came out a couple of years ago called In Secret, which is actually the adaptation of Thérèse Raquin. I would fault them for changing the name, but my middle name is Thérèse, and I don't think I can say it properly, so it's fine. It's called In Secret. And you remember when Oscar Isaac first kind of shot to fame with the Star Wars movie that he did, and everyone was freaking out about him, and I didn't get it. I was like, what's the deal with this guy? Then I watched In Secret, and I get it now. The movie is totally over the top, and like the visuals are so like dark and dreary, which is perfect for the book. And while the book has a lot of sex, it's not exactly sexy, if you know what I mean, but the movie's sexy, so watch it. Number 13 is your favorite review or video that you've posted. I don't really do reviews anymore. Like if I do an actual review, it's usually for another publication or something. So I'll just link to the last one of those I did, which was for Mary Green by Melanie Kerr. Kind of in that same vein as The Wonder and She Rises. It's historical fiction. It's sort of, and in the review I talk a little bit about what it means to be a comfort read. So you can check that out if you're at all interested. Number 14, we're getting to the end, is the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. So I'm going to show you a couple books. I'm doing a project where I'm reading Dostoevsky in order, the novellas and the novels anyway. So I've started to collect these Penguin Classic editions. And despite the fact that they have different levels of shininess on the covers, like look how shiny that one is and these ones are not. And even the orange that's used on the spines is slightly different. It's still pleasing to have books that all sort of go well together. And I think my favorite of the covers is this one. I just like the colors on this one. Some of them are quite, that cover doesn't do much for me. It's more just like having the set of them that is pleasing to me. And lastly, the book that you need to read before the end of the year. So that is the collected short stories of Jean Rhys. So this just came out this year. I pre-ordered it. I was so excited to get it. And I just haven't been in the mood for it yet. So hopefully that will come in the second half of the year. Maybe short stories would be a good thing for me to pick up in between reading chapters of War and Peace. We'll see. But this is also beautiful. This is a Penguin Modern Classics edition. I'm kind of collecting those editions of Jean Rhys as well. So that's it. We're done freaking out. I don't think I freaked out very much. Are you freaking out? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.